I think that negotiating your identity as a social justice leader and a state employee has a lot of overlap because as a state employee, obviously, or like even as an OSU employee, you want to have that air of professionalism to you, and you want to reflect positively upon the organization that you are representing. But social justice work is not always so neat and tidy, and you can't always put it in such a perfect little box. And sometimes that means saying things that perhaps the institution might not like to push forward or might not agree with your opinions, but sometimes those things do have to be said. And so this goes back to the debate that we had a couple of weeks ago. Like, when do you put aside your like when do you put aside what you're supposed to do, and when do you push forward your moral obligations and your ethical obligations and what you believe? And so that goes to if OSU said that they were gonna fire you if you participated in like a stand out or like a walk, would you do it? And I think is based on the situation. It's based on circumstances. The questions that I have for past CRFs, where it comes to navigating these social justice, I think just one of the questions that I have for like the earlier CRFs. So Jesus, I think, like, have you ever come across a situation where you've had to make the choice between doing something that you know is not necessarily like the wrong choice, but something that like what would you side on? Like, have you had an instance where you had to side on the institution or like OSU and weren't able to do what you wanted to do in terms of social justice? So two of the readings or the texts that I really gravitated towards was the Little Book of Dialogue for Difficult Subjects, and then Paulo Freire's last public interview. And I want to start with the interview first because this really it struck a couple of chords with me. And one of the first things that Paulo says is to be tolerant. And I think I personally have a lot of problems being tolerant towards people because I don't have a lot of patience. But he talks about how we have a duty to be tolerant, and that doesn't mean that we lose our personality. I think that was very powerful for me because I've had instances in the past where I didn't really there was a person I didn't really like her because she was kind of flaky, and I just didn't want to be tolerant. Like, I just did not like her, so I didn't put up with her at all. And I felt that I was being genuine because everyone else didn't really like her, but they liked her to her face. And to me, that wasn't genuine. Like, they were kind of just going with the status quo and not really standing up for what they thought. But then I realized that being tolerant is really important because each one of us are unique individuals that have been through different things. We each have different backgrounds, different stories, and all of us need some kindness in our lives. We need other people to be tolerant of us, whether we're having like a bad day, a bad week, a bad year. Like, we need people to have that patience. And I think that my way of giving back is being patient towards other people. And Paulo also says that it's necessary to understand others, and that's a way of being tolerant, and that helps us reach prosperity. Something else that I really liked that he said was that it is important to make clear to the children that their way of speaking is as beautiful as our way, and secondly, that they have a right to speak that way. So he was talking about minority children or children who do not speak who speak a different language or not the dominant language. But I think that the thing that he said after that was very, very true in the sense that the more that oppressed people get the dominant syntax, the more that they can voice their opinions. And that is so true. Like, we shouldn't force them to be speaking English because it is the most common language in the world, but or so people think. But if those people can speak English, if they can communicate with a larger range of the population, that means that they can stand up for what they believe is unjust. They can stand up and speak about their frustrations and the ways that society has done them wrong, and that's so important for you to be able to speak for yourself instead of having others speak for you. As for the little book of dialogue for difficult subjects, the first couple of pages talked about how a group must come to its own conclusions based on the participants' exchange, and this reminded me of CRF workshops where Raven just kind of sits back and doesn't really say anything, doesn't really contribute unless the group needs some facilitating, but she just lets us talk and share our opinions, and that's really powerful because that way we don't necessarily know what she's thinking, but we're able to come to that conclusion by ourselves and understand what she wants us to understand, basically. And this helps people understand all points of views, including their own, without having a prior bias instilled in them. But the dialogue portion is generally what occurs in workshops, but sometimes I feel like there needs to be more facilitation and there needs to be a greater push, because this is just the dialogue portion. How do you get to the action portion? How do you get to people actually making a change instead of just being aware? Because I think a lot of times people have a certain level of understanding or knowledge, they just don't have the resources in order to act upon it.